Let's take a look at transforming this Google Sheet into a functional internal tool for our business. This is a spreadsheet that we use to track orders for our business and lists the items, quantities, and shipping address for our team to process orders. Now, let's switch over to internal, where we're going to build a user interface that will allow us to better manage and process our orders. First, we want to see the orders that need to be packed, so let's add a card list component that's going to allow us to do that. We're going to choose our order management Google Sheet that we connected to internal, and the function that we want it to do is to list our orders records. This is a list of orders to pack, so let's call it that. And for the card name, let's insert a variable and then use the order number, the order ID, as the card name shown at the top of each card. Now we can hide some fields that we don't need, like the row number, order ID, the status, and all of the shipping address information, as well as the SKU image. Instead, let's actually display an image using that SKU image URL, and this is going to help our packing team pack the right things. To do this, we'll go over to the fields, and what we're going to do is add an inline component, and we're going to select image. And for the URL, since the URL for each image is contained in that field, what we're going to do is reference back to this card, the data in each card, and then pick the SKU image. Now let's go back to our card list and add a filter so that we're only going to display the orders that need to be packed. In that case, what we're going to do is match up all the orders where the status is equal to ordered. After packing, the next stage is shipping. So let's go ahead and add a table component that's going to help us manage that phase. We're going to use the same sheet as our data source, and we're also going to select the same function to list orders records. We'll name this component the ship table and call it to ship. This time, the fields that we want are all the address related ones, and we can hide row number, the item SKU, quantity, status, and the SKU image. And for filters, what we want to do is show only the items where the status is equal to packed. Before we start adding buttons to add functionality to our tool, let's add one last display component, which is going to be another table. Now this table is going to display kind of our history of our completed orders, both the shipped ones and the canceled ones. So once again, we're going to select the order management Google Sheet and list orders records. Call it the history table, give it the history title. We'll hide row number and SKU image. And let's add some filters. So the first thing that we want is the status is not equal to ordered. And the other filter that we want is similar, but the status is not equal to packed. So now you'll see there's only shipped and canceled left. One neat thing that we can do is differentiate these two a little bit more visually by adding pillboxes. So if we go over to status and select pillbox, we can change the display name. So let's say we want to call it completed instead of shipped, and then make them all green. And then for our other item, let's just do canceled and make this red, and that'll make things a little bit clearer on this table. Now let's go back to our card list and let's add a button to indicate that this has been packed. For our data source, we're going to act on that order management sheet. This time, we're going to update an orders record. We can customize the button. And for our row number, what we want to do is identify the same row that this card is in, and that will identify the correct row in the Google Sheet. And so we're going to use a value from a component, and we're going to reference itself. So we're going to reference this card, the data in this card, and the row number. For the status, that's the other field that we want this button to act on. We want it to change the status, and so here, what we're going to do is have it set a custom default value. And the status that we're going to use here is packed. We're also going to want to go over to effects. And so when we submit this button, we also want it to refresh different components. So we want it to refresh the ship table so that you'll see those items now appear in this table. Now, if we go back to our card list, just move this button under the image. Next, let's take a look at our to-ship table and add some functionality. We want the ability for the order to be canceled at the stage as well as completed. So the first thing that we want to do is add a Flexbox component, and this is going to contain the two buttons within a single column. Let's go and add our first component to this Flexbox, which will be a button. We're going to have it act on the order management Google Sheet, and we're going to have it update an orders record. We're going to call this the complete button, call it complete. And again, since we want this button to act on the record that is in that row, for the row number, what we want to do is bind it to a component and choose that same row, the data, and then the row number. So it's going to update the right row. Now we want to go ahead and set the status, give it a custom default value, and we're going to call it shipped. Now let's pop over to the effects tab, and once again, we want to remember that we want to refresh a component, and this time we want to refresh the history table. So that should, once you press this button, move this record out of this table, and you'll see it in this table. Now let's go back to our Flexbox and add our second button, which is going to do the same thing. We're going to pick order management. We're going to pick update orders records. This time we'll just give it a trash can icon. We're going to call this the cancel button. We're going to do the same thing where we're going to bind it to this row and the same row number. And this time we're going to have it set our status to a custom default value where that value is canceled. We'll go over to effects. And again, we're going to have it refresh the history table here. And then design-wise, we'll make this button white. We can go back to our Flexbox and change the design here. Let's say we want to add some spacing in between our buttons, or we could align it center and add a medium amount of padding in between the two buttons. The Flexbox gives you a lot of flexibility in how you want to lay out the components within it. Now we're done putting together the tool. Let's go ahead and publish and take a look at how it works in our space. And now we can see our completed tool where you can view orders that need to be packed in this card list, indicate that they are complete. And then you can see those orders that need to be shipped. Once they're ready, you can either indicate that they have been shipped, and you'll see it in the history table, or you can cancel orders right before they are shipped, and those will be updated as well. That's it. We'll see you next time.